"Sir, please don't leave yet. I know I can't pay you today, but I promise, I'll pay you back when I grow up." The millionaire stopped with his hand on the cafe door. He slowly turned around and looked at the little girl standing beside the counter, both hands wrapped around an empty glass of milk. Her shoes were worn, her dress was clean but faded, and her dark hair was tied into 2 uneven braids. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. The millionaire looked at the bill he had just paid. 1 glass of milk, that was all. He had spent more on that glass than the girl's family probably spent on food in several days. Yet the seriousness in her voice made him pause. "Pay me back?" he asked gently. The little girl nodded. "Yes, sir. And how are you going to do that?" She lowered her eyes for a moment, then looked up with the most determined expression he had ever seen. "I'll become someone who can help people like you helped me." The millionaire stared at her. For some reason, those words reached somewhere inside him that money had never been able to reach. If stories about kindness and second chances touch your heart, stay with me until the end, and if you believe one small act can change a person's entire life, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because what happened between this little girl and that millionaire would prove that sometimes the person who receives the smallest gift gives back the greatest one. 3 hours earlier, the millionaire had been sitting alone in a quiet cafe on the corner of a busy city street. His name was Daniel Carter. At 43, Daniel owned several successful businesses, lived in a luxurious apartment overlooking the city, and drove a car that attracted attention everywhere he went. People saw the expensive suit, the private offices, the polished shoes, and the confident businessman. They didn't see the loneliness. Daniel had spent years building an empire because he believed success could protect him from pain. It couldn't. His parents had died when he was young. He had no siblings, no wife, and no children. He had spent most of his adult life working. Whenever people asked him why he worked so hard, he always gave the same answer. "Because I don't want to be poor again." But there was another answer he rarely admitted. He was afraid of needing anyone. That afternoon, Daniel sat by the window, staring at his untouched coffee while reviewing documents on his tablet. Outside, rain had started falling. People hurried along the sidewalk, covering their heads with jackets and umbrellas. Then Daniel noticed a little girl standing outside the cafe. She wasn't asking anyone for money. She was simply staring through the glass. Her eyes were fixed on a table where a woman was drinking a warm bowl of soup. The girl's lips moved slightly. Daniel couldn't hear her through the window, but he saw her swallow. The cafe waitress noticed her too. "Sweetheart," the waitress called, opening the door slightly. "Are you waiting for someone?" The little girl nodded. "My mother." "Where is she?" "Working." "Does she know you're here?" The girl shook her head. The waitress looked uncomfortable. "We can't let children stay outside in the rain. Come inside for a minute." The girl hesitated. Then she stepped inside. Daniel watched as she quietly sat in a corner. Her clothes were damp. The waitress brought her a napkin. "Are you hungry?" The little girl immediately shook her head. "No," but her stomach betrayed her with a loud growl. The waitress looked at her. The girl turned red with embarrassment. Daniel closed his tablet. "Bring her something," he said. The waitress looked toward him. "What would you like?" Daniel glanced at the little girl. "What would you like?" She shook her head quickly. "Nothing." "Are you sure?" "Yes, sir." Daniel smiled faintly. "Then how about a glass of milk?" The girl's eyes lifted. She hesitated. "Is it expensive?" The question stunned him. "No." "How much?" "It's okay," Daniel said. "I'll pay for it." The little girl looked at him suspiciously, as if kindness from strangers was something she had learned to be careful about. "Just milk." "Just milk." She finally nodded. The waitress brought a warm glass of milk. The girl held it with both hands. She didn't drink immediately. Instead, she whispered, "Thank you." Then she took the first sip. Daniel watched her face. The tension slowly disappeared. She drank carefully, as though she wanted to make the glass last forever. Daniel looked away. Something about it made him uncomfortable, not because she was doing anything wrong, but because he suddenly remembered himself at her age. He remembered being hungry. He remembered his mother cutting one sandwich into 2 pieces and pretending she wasn't hungry. He remembered promising her one day that he would buy her a house where she would never worry about money. He had kept the promise. But she had never lived to see it. "What's your name?" he asked. The girl looked at him. "Emma." "Emma what?" "Emma Wilson." "And how old are you?" 8. "Where's your father?" Her smile disappeared. "I don't know." Daniel immediately regretted asking. "And your mother?" She works at the laundry place 2 streets away. Does she know you're here? Emma shook her head. She told me to stay at the shelter until she finished her shift. But they said there wasn't room. Daniel frowned. You've been waiting outside. Emma nodded. How long? She looked at the clock. Since lunch. Daniel glanced at the time. It was almost 5. His expression changed. You've been outside for hours. I wasn't cold before. Daniel looked at her thin jacket. He removed his own coat and placed it gently around her shoulders. Emma's eyes widened. No, sir, you'll be cold. I have another one in my car. She smiled. It was the first real smile he had seen from her. Then she finished her milk. Daniel paid the bill and stood. He was about to leave when Emma suddenly jumped down from the chair. Sir. He turned. She was holding the empty glass. I'll pay you back. Daniel smiled. You don't have to. I do. You're 8 years old. I know. You don't owe me anything. Emma shook her head. I promised. Daniel crouched so they were at eye level. Emma, it was just a glass of milk. She looked directly into his eyes. It wasn't just milk to me. Daniel went silent. Emma continued. When you're hungry, everything feels scary. But when someone gives you food, you feel like maybe tomorrow will be okay. Daniel's throat tightened. He didn't know what to say. So he simply asked, what are you going to do when you grow up? Emma answered without hesitation. Become a doctor. Why? Because doctors help people. Anything else? She smiled. And I'll buy my mother a house. Daniel smiled. That's a good dream. Emma nodded. I'm going to do it. Then she looked down at his coat. Can I give this back? Keep it, but consider it part of your debt. Emma's eyes became serious. Then I really will pay you back. Daniel laughed softly. I'll hold you to that. He left the cafe, but for the first time in years, he didn't think about his business. He thought about Emma. The next morning, Daniel returned to the cafe. He wasn't sure why. Maybe he wanted to see if Emma was okay. Maybe he wanted to know whether her mother had found her. Maybe he simply wanted to make sure the promise in those little eyes hadn't been forgotten. The waitress told him Emma had come back. She asked about you. Daniel looked toward the door. Where is she? She'll be here soon. 20 minutes later, Emma walked in holding her mother's hand. Her mother was a tired-looking woman named Sarah. She immediately recognized Daniel. You're the man who helped my daughter. Daniel stood. Please, sit. Sarah hesitated. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to. I do. Emma climbed onto the chair. I told him I'm going to pay him back. Sarah looked embarrassed. Emma. Daniel smiled. She's serious. Sarah sighed. She has always been like that. What happened to your family? Daniel asked carefully. Sarah looked down. Her father left when she was 3. I worked wherever I could. Recently I lost my apartment because the landlord raised the rent. We've been staying at a temporary shelter. Daniel listened quietly. He didn't offer money immediately. Instead, he asked, what do you need most? Sarah looked at him. Work. Daniel nodded. I may know someone. He called his office manager. Within an hour, Sarah had an interview at one of Daniel's companies for a stable administrative position. She got the job. Daniel also arranged for a modest apartment through a housing program his company supported. But he made one thing clear. This isn't charity, he told Sarah. You work hard. You deserve an opportunity. Sarah cried. Emma hugged him. Now I'm only one step closer to paying you back. Daniel laughed. You're keeping count. Of course. Months passed. Emma's life changed. She went to school regularly. She had warm clothes. She had books. She had a safe home. But what surprised Daniel most was that Emma never became spoiled. Every Friday, she visited a small community center near her school and helped distribute food to children who needed it. One afternoon, Daniel found her there. What are you doing? Emma looked up. Paying you back. Daniel smiled. You think helping someone else pays me back? Emma nodded. You helped me, so I helped them. Daniel's smile faded, because suddenly he understood. Emma had taken his small act of kindness and turned it into something much bigger. Years passed. Daniel continued working, but something inside him had changed. He started funding school lunches. Then scholarships. Then community centers. He never put his name on the buildings. Whenever journalists asked why, he simply said, someone once taught me that helping one person is never just helping one person. Emma grew into a brilliant student. At 18, she received a scholarship to study medicine. At 24, she graduated near the top of her class. Daniel was sitting in the audience. When Emma walked across the stage, she looked into the crowd and found him. She smiled. After the ceremony, She ran toward him. You came. I promised. Emma laughed. You remember that old promise? Daniel pretended to think. The glass of milk. Yes. You still owe me. Emma shook her head. No, I don't. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Really? Emma smiled. I paid you back years ago. When? Every time I helped another person. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Emma continued. That day, you didn't just buy me milk. You gave me a reason to believe that people could still be kind. I promised myself that if I ever became successful, I would give someone else the same feeling. Daniel looked at her. You kept your promise. Emma nodded. So did you. What do you mean? You promised me that my debt could be paid by helping others. Daniel smiled. I don't remember saying that. You did. No, I didn't. You did with your actions. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Emma hugged him. Daniel closed his eyes. For the first time since losing his parents, he didn't feel like the lonely boy who had once been afraid of poverty. He felt like someone who had finally found a family. Years later, Emma Wilson opened a free medical clinic in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city. On the first day, hundreds of people came. Some needed medicine, some needed checkups, some simply needed someone to listen. Above the clinic entrance was a small sign. It didn't say Daniel Carter's name. It didn't say Emma Wilson's name. It simply said, kindness grows when you pass it on. Daniel stood outside the clinic on opening day. Emma walked toward him wearing her white coat. You came, she said. Of course. She handed him a small glass bottle. Inside was a tiny piece of paper. Daniel opened it. Written in a child's handwriting were the words, I'll pay you back when I grow up. Daniel laughed through his tears. You kept this. For 20 years. He looked at her. You know something, Emma. What? That was the best investment I ever made. Emma shook her head. No, sir. She pointed toward the clinic. That was. Daniel looked at the people entering the building. He realized then that his greatest fortune had never been the millions in his bank accounts. It had been a glass of milk, a little girl, and a promise. Because sometimes we think we need to give someone something huge to change their life. But sometimes it is a meal, a kind word, a warm coat, a job opportunity, a second chance. Sometimes it is simply stopping when everyone else keeps walking. And you may never know how far that small act will travel. Emma thought she had been the one who owed Daniel a debt. But Daniel eventually realized the truth. He had received far more than he had ever given. So if you're watching this story today, remember this, never underestimate a small act of kindness. You may think you're only helping one person, but that person may go on to help hundreds more. And somewhere in the world, someone may be waiting for the exact kindness you are capable of giving. So don't wait until you're rich. Don't wait until you're successful. Don't wait until tomorrow. If you can help someone today, help them. Because one glass of milk changed Emma's life. Emma changed hundreds of lives. And the kindness that began with one little girl and one millionaire continued far beyond either of them. And perhaps that is what true wealth really means, not how much you can keep, but how much good you can leave behind. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Because sometimes, the smallest kindness becomes the greatest story a person will ever tell.